Good morning, everyone. Oh, I'm going to take this. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sneška Quaedvlieg-Mihailović, and I'm the Secretary-General of Europa Nostra, the European voice for cultural heritage, civil society active in the field of cultural heritage, and also the proud leader of the European Heritage Hub Consortium. And I want to welcome you all to this new edition of the Heritage Dialogues organized by the European Heritage Hub. Very warm welcome to all of you. I see that you have joined from various parts of Europe, and I think perhaps also beyond Europe, many familiar faces, but also special greetings to all of you that we meet virtually for the very first time. I think we have a very varied group of heritage stakeholders together in this virtual conference hall, and we are all together to discuss a very, very topical issue. Just first, practical information. This webinar will be recorded, and the recording will be available on the European Heritage Hub website, so you will be able to watch it again or share it through your own networks and through your own media and social media, because the topics is indeed very important. Europe today is facing so many challenges, but among these many challenges, there is also a double challenge: to respond effectively to the climate emergency, and also to respond effectively to a growing housing affordability crisis. And this is exactly the topic of the webinar that we are organizing today. And we wanted to bring these two challenges together and to demonstrate that cultural heritage is a resource in this mobilization for responding effectively for these two crises. So let's first mention the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, the famous EPBD. And this is a directive that exists already, and it is regularly updated. And the new age directive will guide the building transformation in Europe until 2050. And it is a key element of the European Green Deal and the way that Europe is affronting and organizing the response to the challenge of the green transformation and the climate action. And so the implementation and the proper implementation of that directive is critical also for the heritage sector. Because you all know that the implementation of that directive poses a real challenge for historic buildings. And there is a risk, a very real risk, of inappropriate one-size-fits-all interventions, and the risk of the lack of specialist guiding and adequate funding, which is needed for a nuanced and heritage-sensitive approach which respects the specificity of heritage and the integrity of the historical and heritage fabric of our cities and our living environment. That is one challenge. The other challenge is the forthcoming European Affordable Housing Strategy. And it is expected to be published very soon, on the 16th of December. So our discussion cannot be more topical. And that strategy will shape the future of inclusive, sustainable, community-centered living across Europe. And we, the heritage stakeholders, must get organized in order also to demonstrate that we are not something which is marginal, but we are also something, and the heritage and the historical buildings are also part of the solution to creating a credible and an effective strategy in that field. And so for these both challenges, our message is that historic buildings are part of the solution. They're not an obstacle. Historic buildings and traditional urban fabric, when renovated sensitively, can significantly contribute to affordable housing, to circular economy, and also to the community well-being. And that's why the research shows that upgrading existing buildings is usually more climate friendly than any demolition and any new construction. We have to demonstrate together that indeed preservation is also part of the climate action. So last week on Friday, I followed the discussion at the Council of Ministers meeting. The ministers of culture of the European Union got together. And then together with Jutta, we were very pleased to hear the chair, the Danish Minister of Culture, mentioning precisely the directive, the energy efficient performance of buildings directive, and he himself saying that he was surprised that there is no more discussion about the fact that nowadays there is an absence. It seems that currently there is an absence of special rules for heritage building in the recast of that directive. So also from the Council of Ministers, we have got a signal that that the discussion is missing and we don't have much time. So this webinar is also ringing the alarm bell and sort of a call to action, a call to arm and call to action for us all. And so after this webinar, we will make sure this is not just a conversation. This webinar is going to be the basis for us to prepare a forceful argumentation that we are going to bring with us and seek the meetings with the commissioners, two commissioners who are sort of our commissioner, Mihailović, who is in charge of culture, but also Commissioner Jurgensen, who is in charge both of energy and housing. So we need to knock on his door as well, and with these two members of the European Commission, have an open and constructive conversation. How can we fill the gap that we feel that still exists? And of course, the Directorate-General for the two DGs, Education and Culture, and the DG Energy. And I'm very happy that these two DGs of a European Commission are represented and will take the floor shortly, are with us. So we are in all this together. It's not the civil society against the institution, it is the institution and civil society together searching for the best solution. So, and just the last point in this introduction, we all know that recently, on the 12th of November, Commissioner Mihailović, that I just mentioned, has published the much-awaited document, so a strategic document, the Cultural Compass, the strategic document that elevates culture and cultural heritage as a strategic priority and a political priority of the European Union across the various policy areas. We all have contributed to this document, and I think we can sort of applaud the Commission, but also congratulate our all the stakeholders who contributed to this consultation. And in this document also, the vital intersection between culture and heritage and climate action is duly highlighted. And also the relationship with energy efficiency is just mentioned. So it is there while it has not been developed. And we also will have, together with the European Heritage Hub and the European Heritage Alliance, we will have soon a meeting with the Commissioner Mihailović on the 17th of December. And that is when we will discuss with him how and offer him and the European Commission the help to deepen the action of the European Union in these various, in many areas identified in the Cultural Compass, and for what is important for our conversation today, with regard to the energy efficiency as an important part of the climate action, and also add the whole area of sustainable and affordable housing strategy, because this has not been mentioned in the cultural compass. So, but it doesn't mean that there is not ample room to embrace also that area, because this is a very clear message from the cultural compass that culture and cultural heritage have a transversal value, and that European Union must adopt a holistic, integrated approach. That means that also in the areas of energy and in the areas of housing, cultural heritage should be used as a positive resource, as a resource for sustainability, as something that we have been advocating for so many years. So, dear colleagues and friends, that's all what I wanted to say at the very beginning of this, I'm sure, fascinating exchange. Before giving the floor for the first introductory speeches, I think we want just to make a group photo. I want to make sure that we also, if you can ask you all to switch on your videos. We want to see your faces, to welcome you all, and to our team will make the screenshots. I think we have several screenshots to make, because how many? We are already 100 in the room. We had 300 registrations for this webinar, but so now, nice smile and...
Ready? 1, 2, 3, smile. Thank you all.
Okay, we go now for the first speaker, who looked so much forward to participate in person, but he had to be in a meeting at the European Parliament. This is our very good friend and very good ally, member of the European Parliament, who comes from Spain, Marcos Ros Sempere. I think many of you know him. He's also architect and very much dedicated to the urban agenda and the intersection between cultural heritage and urban agenda, the new European Bauhaus, etc., etc. So Marcos could not be with us in person, but he has recorded a video message. So please, can we hear the message of Marcos?
We don't hear anything.
Hello, dear colleagues.
Okay.
Thank you for the invitation.
That is very low.
But I would like to thank to Europa Nostra for the opportunity to send this video message and to contribute to your important work. It is a pleasure to join this discussion on cultural heritage, the EPBD recast, and the affordable housing, 3 areas that must move forward together if we want a hot topic across the European Union. As a member of the European Parliament and as an architect, I know how essential cultural heritage is for our societies. Heritage is not only about preserving the past, it is key to our identity, our sense of belonging, and our social cohesion. The EPBD recognizes the specific value of historic buildings. This is very important, but implementation will only succeed if member states design renovation plans that avoid maladaptations, provide clear guidance, and ensure sufficient and dedicated funding. Renovation must not become a threat to heritage. On the contrary, when done properly, heritage buildings become real climate allies. Upgrading and adapting our cultural heritage is clearly better than demolishing and building again, not to mention the irreparable damage that demolition causes to the heritage itself. Renovation also supports the circular economy, keeps neighborhoods alive, and protects the cultural identity that our societies value. This is not an easy task, all of this must be done with the urgency of the current housing crisis. Europe is facing an unprecedented situation, and the scale of renovation and climate adaptation demands real investment, something we did not see in the MFF proposal presented by the Commission this past summer. We must link renovation strategies with the need for affordable housing. Many member states and cities across Europe are struggling. Renovation must reduce energy poverty, improve comfort, and provide dignified and affordable homes. Not increase speculation or displacement, while also contributing to the rehabilitation of cultural heritage and always taking into account the principles of the new European Bauhaus initiative. The upcoming affordable housing strategy will be a key moment. It must see cultural heritage as a part of the solution, not an obstacle for greener and more resilient cities. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you, Marcos Ros Sempere. It is important for us to have such an ally at the European Parliament, and I hope the next step in our mobilization will be to organize a hearing with him and with other members of the Parliament of these topics. But for now, I want to give the floor to two representatives of the European Commission. And first, our very dear colleague, Jutta Kastner, who is Policy Officer at the European Commission, Directorate-General for Education, Youth, Sports and Culture, the unit D.2, Creative Europe. Jutta is, for us, the face of the defense of the quality architecture, excellence with regard to preservation of buildings, contemporary buildings, but also historical buildings. Jutta, thank you so much. You have also been somebody who encouraged us to organize this webinar. So thank you for being with us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So really, I can only resonate what a lot of speakers before me, and especially you, Sneška, have already said, but I will say it anyhow, because I want to put also to the fore how the concerns and the calls for action that have been raised in your previous speeches are already partially embedded in our policies. So yeah, thank you very much for inviting me to this dialogue. And it is indeed very rewarding to see the community that is gathered to look at the heritage not as something fragile and marginal, as you mentioned before, Sneška, but as a powerful ally in shaping Europe's future. As you said, as policy officer at the European Commission, I contribute to shaping EU policy on culture, and in particular with a strong focus on high quality environment and fostering a shared culture of architecture across Europe, and cultural heritage is part of it. So, as you said, we are meeting at a moment when several major EU priorities converge. The goal of climate neutrality by 2050, the urgent need to improve energy performance across Europe's buildings, and the growing challenge of housing affordability. So the recast of the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive embodies these convergence. It asks us to transform how we renovate, how we build, and how we plan for the long term ahead. So what is the role of heritage in this transition? The directive, as we heard, does acknowledge the specific value of historic buildings, but we also know that its implementation comes with challenges, and it has been said several times this morning already. The risk of inappropriate or poorly adapted interventions, funding schemes that do not always match the needs of heritage contexts, and above all, a lack of specialized knowledge needed to ensure renovation is both energy smart and heritage sensitive. So these concerns have been recognized widely, including in the Member State Expert Group's report, Strengthening Cultural Heritage Resilience for Climate Change. And they remind us that climate action must be intelligent, nuanced, and sensitive to place. But there is also a bigger opportunity. We are not only talking about preserving the past, we are talking about future-proofing our societies. And here, heritage buildings have extraordinary potential. They are anchors of identity, of our values. They offer structures already embedded in communities. And when upgraded carefully, they can provide, as you said, affordable housing, community spaces, and low carbon solutions rooted in circular principles. Research tells us, and also that has been said repeatedly this morning, that renovation is almost always more climate friendly than demolition and new construction. And this is not just a technical argument, it is a cultural and environmental responsibility. And all this is embedded in a wider policy landscape that we also, in culture policy, put to the fore. So beyond the EPBD, Europe is putting cultural heritage and architecture at the heart of the green transition. The Culture Compass, you mentioned, that the Commission has released these days, reminds us that climate and energy policies must respect and sustain cultural ecosystems. And the new European Bauhaus continues to bring together sustainability, inclusion, and beauty as guiding values for our built environment. Research and innovation initiatives are already in place and are slowly increasing in numbers, supported with EU funding, that are building new knowledge for resilience. But more of these should be created and launched. This also aligns closely with the work we have been advancing through the EU member states expert group's report towards a shared culture of architecture. And some of the speakers today have been involved in this expert group. So that process and the continued work on architectural policies emphasizes that architecture is a public good and cultural heritage is part of it. Renovations must be holistic and high quality, and the built environment must serve people, communities, and long-term sustainability. At the same time, and that has also been emphasized several times this morning, Europe is facing an increasingly urgent housing challenge. Many cities are experiencing rising prices, limited supply, and redevelopment pressures that threaten both social cohesion and cultural identity. The upcoming EU Affordable Housing Strategy that will be, as you said, presented on the 16th of December, will offer a new framework to respond to this. It will highlight the need for inclusive and sustainable renovation, community-centered reuse, and high-quality environments that remain accessible to all. Heritage buildings, when handled with care, can play a vital role in meeting these objectives. They can be adapted into affordable housing, and we do have already good practice across Europe and beyond that can showcase these. They can support social mix, and they can offer dignified living in places with meaning. What does all of this ask from us? If we truly want heritage to contribute to climate action and housing solutions, we must break the silos between sectors. We must connect cultural heritage experts with architects, planners, energy specialists, and housing authorities. And we must build shared capacities so that renovation strategies are not only energy efficient, but also culturally rooted and socially fair. This is exactly what tools like the Culture Compass, the new European Bauhaus and national architecture policies encourage us to do. To see the built environment not as a set of technical challenges, but as a place where culture, quality of life, and sustainability can meet. So to say, a new narrative for Europe's buildings. In this sense, today's webinar is more than a technical discussion. It is an invitation to all of us to rethink the narrative around Europe's buildings. Heritage buildings are not obstacles, like you said, Sneška, very well. They are resources for climate neutrality, for affordability, and for community well-being. They are the fabric that holds our cities together, the material memory that gives places an identity, and the foundation on which we can build sustainable futures. So I do hope that today's dialogue that you organized so well will help us move forwards to a shared understanding, one that recognizes that Europe's climate neutral future must also be culturally meaningful, socially inclusive, and build on principles of care, creativity, and quality. So thank you very much again to Europa, Nostra, and the Heritage Hub for organizing this webinar, and to the speakers and the audience for your great interest in this topic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jutta. Fantastic introductory works. The words, I think the way how you have presented the challenge ahead, and which is a marvelous challenge, in fact, and the way how you have clearly shown, you called for a new narrative for Europe's building. And so many buildings are historical buildings, and many of these historical buildings are protected as heritage. So, and what I thought so important that you said, it's not about us being nostalgic about our past. It's about very much future oriented, because we want a better quality of life for people in future in Europe. So in that sense, what we are offering, it's a very important quality proposition that we are making. And then that's, famous, we have to break the silos. Exactly. And I think that is the raison d'etre of the entire European Heritage Hub, is to help break those silos. And also us, the heritage people, build as many bridges with relevant sectors, and to start with the world of architecture, and with the Architects Council of Europe, we are doing that. And I would like to ask our team to share in the link sort of the Krakow Declaration that was adopted at the meeting that Architects Council of Europe organized on new European Bauhaus and cultural heritage, and all these topics we have indicated in the declaration organized with Europa Nostra and with ICOMOS, and also the link to the Bucharest document that was adopted during a Europa Nostra summit. It was also about the quality, insisting on quality with regard to architecture and dealing with buildings. Now, because it is about breaking the silos, we are delighted that we also have Jutta, your colleague, who comes from Directorate-General for Energy. And special greetings to Marco Morini, who is policy officer and who works at the unit precisely in charge of energy efficiency with regard to building and products. So Marco, it is a special delight to welcome you and to give you the floor.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I hope you can hear me. And also you can see my screen, because I'm going to project some slides. Thank you for having me. And thank you for the very, very inspiring introductions before me. As said, I will talk today a little bit more about the EPBD, the directive that was adopted in 2024, and it is going to be transposed by member states by May 2026. And I will try to give you a brief overview of the implications for heritage and housing of this directive. it is the one that we face today is a dual challenge. Indeed, as was mentioned before, we have the challenge of climate change, and we have a housing crisis that we need that is becoming more and more urgent. And the buildings that we live in must become not only more efficient, but also more inclusive, healthier, and climate resilient. And this does not apply, of course, only to new buildings, but it especially applies to the existing buildings. And absolutely, as was mentioned before, historical buildings are a part of this solution. And for the first time in its 4 editions of the EPBD, this directive has had such a prioritary focus on renovation, because there is a need to increase the speed of renovation for several reasons. And of course, preserving the cultural heritage is a cultural imperative in this objective, and it can be done, and it has to be done. And definitely, heritage building are part of the solution. The EPBD, of course, addresses the building stock. Is a very important directive because indeed it addresses the stock that is more responsible for energy use in Europe, for 40% of the energy used in Europe, for more than 50% of the natural gas used in the EU. And we are talking about 24 billion of square meters, out of which 3/4 are buildings with poor energy performance. And that is why we really need to increase the rate of renovation and speed up the renovation. And when we were working on the EPBD and its assessment, we were trying to understand also, we tried to make an assumption of what could be the share of the existing building stock that could be protected because of historical or special architectural merit. And we come up with a figure that, of course, changes between member states, but is around 5 to 10%. And even can be bigger. So definitely historical buildings are, and heritage buildings are absolutely part of this challenge and have to be updated. And have to be also places where citizens live and work comfortably without having issues of energy inefficiency, for example. And in these slides, I try to make a little bit of a link. I share some thought about heritage efficiency and affordability. And first of all, I would like to highlight that indeed energy efficiency and energy performance is about people's lives. First of all, it's about ensuring that homes are warm in winter and they are cool in summer, which is a growing issue. It is about cutting bills and not just emissions. And indeed, housing affordability has become a very urgent issue in the EU. And that is why, indeed, our commissioner specifically, and the commission has been at work on the European Affordable Housing Plan. It was said before me that indeed it is coming on the 16th of December. Housing is, of course, in the hand of member states. But what the Commission can do and will try to do with the plan that will come soon is, in a way, steering on issues such as EU funding and financing, revising state aid rules, working on how to reduce construction costs, but also issues such as the housing speculation, the systemic issues that are linked, for example, with short-term accommodation rentals. And of course, it will also make work on making proposals to tackle the inefficient use of the current housing stock, trying to indeed intervene on this. Also because, as was said more than once today, new construction is important, but it's very important really to make the best use of what we have. And it's even more important because it's more sustainable as well. So in the fight to climate change, it's absolutely important to make a good use of what we already have in Europe. And one thing that we always highlighted in this process is that affordability is not something that you have to take into account only at the initial stages of renovation of a construction, but it's long-term affordability that is very important. And this is only possible if we ensure a good energy performance and healthy conditions in building. And so our real important message here is that indeed the timely implementation of the PPD is key. And as was said before, one size does not fit all. So the EPBD tries to provide a flexible framework, and definitely heritage buildings are an important part of this challenge because they are often, first of all, inhabited by vulnerable groups, and they also need specific bespoke attention when it comes to renovation. Before going a little bit more in the in the slides that they will explain a little bit more the EPBD provisions and how they affect cultural and protected buildings. I would like to really highlight what I mean from that. In the EPBD, protected buildings are in a way defined and the receivers of some exemption or some specific treatment, let's say, because we understand that, of course, they cannot be treated as other existing buildings, and they are buildings that are officially protected at national, regional, or local level. So it's up to member states to, in a way, identify what needs to be protected as part of a designated environment or because of their special architectural or historical merit. And now, as I was saying, I will look a little bit more in the provisions, trying to highlight the implications on historical buildings, on some articles that really address them more directly. And definitely, as I was saying, in the focus areas, there is a very big priority focus on renovation. First of all, with the introduction of minimum energy performance standards for non-residential buildings, which is a regulatory instrument that is aimed to trigger the renovation of the worst performing non-residential buildings. Here, member states, they will have to set up recipes with the objective to indeed, with some specific targets by 2030 and 2033. And they have the possibility to, for example, exempt protected buildings in the definitions I was mentioning before for, because indeed renovation might alter the characteristics also for technical and economic feasibility reasons, because this is another important thing. There are very urgent objectives, but there is a long-term perspective. So when we are defining minimum energy performance standards that really trigger the renovation of non-residential buildings, we can also decide to start from buildings that are worse performing, and maybe for the heritage building we can consider a more long-term vision, let's say. Also for the renovation of the existing residential building stock, which is really strongly linked with housing, there is a specific objective in terms of reduction of the performance. And also here, member states are called to look in what is the baseline, what is their building stock, and to identify the buildings where they want to focus their renovation efforts. So they are free to include protected buildings in the renovation efforts, and but what is very important is that they will have to find their recipes, their roadmaps to indeed to meet the targets for 2030, but also in the long term for 2050. And this has to be done with the national building renovation plans, which is a very important component of the renovation element of the EPBD. Then there are other important provisions on the decarbonization. For example, an important one to mention is the one related to ensuring the deployment of solar installation in existing buildings. Also here, of course, there are criteria of technical suitabilities and economically and functional feasibility, economical and functional feasibility, and technical feasibility that give member states a large flexibility on how to establish national criteria for exempting, for example, historical buildings, because of course we see that here there is an important element that needs to be taken into account. And then there is a whole area of the EPBD that is related to modernization and to also ensuring that technical building systems are well thought, also with regard, for example, to indoor air and environmental quality. And also here, it may seem that it's not strongly linked with existing and historical buildings, but I think that instead it has some relevance, because these are buildings that are lived and where people work, that are very important to take into elements that are to take into account also when renovating historical building and heritage buildings. And finally, there is a whole enabling framework that underpins all the other elements, and that is related mostly to addressing the administrative, technical, financial barriers, and there is a strong attention towards energy poverty and people in vulnerable conditions, which is of course strongly linked with affordability, housing plan objectives, there is a provision on providing information to citizens to improving skills. And I would like to highlight, however, also an important provision on energy performance certificates, where I would like to also highlight clarify some elements. Protected buildings, until now, they were exempted from energy performance certificates. Energy performance certificates are a very important information tool for consumers, for owners of buildings, for financial institutions to know about the energy performance of buildings, about the also how healthy or unhealthy their buildings are, to receive recommendation on how to tailored recommendation on how to improve the energy performance of the buildings. So this provision is not saying that all heritage building will have to have protected buildings will have to have an EPC, but it's saying that now when an obligation to issue an EPC is introduced, so in case of sale, rental, major renovation, or public buildings, even if they are historical buildings or protected buildings, they will now the EPC will have to be ensured. And this is for me a very important information, because indeed heritage buildings must be part of the solution. They have to be part of the solution in, towards the decarbonization of the building stock. I mentioned before the national building renovation plans, and I focus a little bit more here. These are a very important element here, because they will be really the place where member states will have to make their recipes for reaching a decarbonized building stock by 2050. And indeed, they will have to look closely to the national building stock, do an overview, understand how it works, and then draw up a roadmap with targets and progress indicators, define the policies and measures, and also identify the investment needs. And for example, here there is a possibility to really identify what share of the building stock is important, for example, is protected, and really find policies and measures to address them, and I also identify the investment needs. So they are a very important planning instrument that member states will have to look into. The first submission is going to be in draft by the end of this year. Then the Commission will provide some recommendation, and a final plan is due by December 2026. And I would like to take this opportunity today to highlight that there is a mandatory public consultation that has to be done. Some member states have already done it. Some are still ongoing, I imagine, or will be done in the next weeks, because some member states will be late probably. So engage with your member states and make your voice heard is a very important thing, because these are really the place where member states will set out their recipes. So to conclude, I just would like to highlight that historic buildings are very complex, diverse, and sensitive. Many are protected indeed, and renovating them calls for bespoke solutions that respect the cultural value while improving performance. And the EPBD I understand that no one size fits all, and provides does not prescribe uniform outcomes, but rather provides to member states a flexible framework that can and must be tailored by member states. And as I was saying, in many provisions, I mentioned them here, protected buildings are exempted or treated differently, but at the same time, innovation can shown that many renovation measures can go a long way without compromising historical features. And for that, we do not need only vision, we also need financing and investment, and we need investment in skills and training, ensuring, for example, that artisans, engineers, energy experts can collaborate effectively on heritage projects. And this is not only a guarantee for quality, but also is a possibility for new local jobs, and is a possibility to improve also local economies. And finally, there are, talking about financing, there are several EU instruments that will need to be continue to be thought to combine heritage preservation with energy efficiencies, and this is because this is an important thing. But we do not only vision, as I was saying, we also need viable financing. And we also need, most importantly, capacity and inspiration. So thank you for the discussion today, and I hope I gave a good overview of the EPBD, and thank you very much for having me.
Grazie, Marco. Thank you so much. It was an excellent presentation, and I'm delighted to see that we have not only an ally in the DG Culture, we also have an ally in DG Energy. And so, I mean, everything you presented shows that you're very much in your Directorate-General, very much aware of the issues that we are discussing in this webinar. We are not asking for exemption. We are asking for an understanding of the specificity of the historic buildings and the necessity for a special treatment and special introduction on special rules. As we said, we are part of the solution, and you know, we can't treat a 30 years old building in the same way that we are treating a 500 years old building. So that is something that you're clearly understanding. And as Jutta also said, what we need is to learn and to disseminate best practices. We want as little worst practices and as many best practices. And I think that is about, you know, all what we want to achieve and how to put all the resources. And you indicated many instruments also that would be important in order to promote and skills and training and finding these best practices and disseminating them. So a lot of work ahead of us together,
Yes.
the various services of the Commission, your commissioner, our commissioner, and you indicated the member states. I think that is, again, for our to-do list, the next year will be crucial. We noted that you said mandatory public consultations. We must make sure that our voices and our arguments are properly heard and taken into consideration. So we are now having we are delighted to have, you know, two persons who will further kick off this mobilization, I would say, and this call will contribute to this call to action. The first one is Ivana Katuric. We are really honored to have in our webinar one member of the Housing Advisory Board to the European Commission, set up relatively recently, because as you know, this whole policy is relatively recent policy of the European Union. And we are delighted that Ivana, who is come from Croatia, who is director of Urbanex, an assistant professor at the university in Rijeka, has kindly accepted to join our webinar and tell us, do we have an ally in the Housing Advisory Board as well? Ivana, unmute, please.
Thank you so much. First of all, I have to apologize because I'm at the München airport. So for all possible noises that you can hear around me, I'm really, there is nothing I can do about it. But what I wanted to say is that I find this discussion really insightful and so important. So I really did my best to join even under these very difficult circumstances. So thank you very much, Sneška, for the kind words, and also thanks for the colleagues from the European Commission for understanding the next steps and the ways to proceed. As Sneška already explained, I'm a member of the Housing Advisory Board, meaning that we are independent work group of experts. We were selected after the public call, with really a huge number of experts being interested to be part. So it is clear that affordable housing is a huge topic also on the expert level in the community. We have presented 75 recommendations to the Commission, a little bit I think 1 month before the plan. I think that we were 2 days late, so we presented it like on the 20th of November, if I remember properly. And this group of experts is very heterogeneous. So we had to make it work. We had to make, of course, a lot of compromises and to come to a certain conclusions. Concerning my background, as Sneška already noted, I'm a member, of course, of Europa Nostra and of ICOMOS as well. I worked for many years in the sector of heritage planning, but also I work in the sector of finance, and I was coordinating funding and finance group of the Housing Advisory Board. Here I'm presenting my own opinions, so I will be more free to discuss it. However, I find it appropriate as an expert. So I will be very open. And the discussion is always somehow moving in this direction. So we need housing, we need it fast. The crisis is huge, so let's construct in a fast way. So somewhere where municipalities, where public sector already has a land, usually it is on the outskirts of the cities, we should do it fast. So it should be something like design and build and so on. We should reach a certain quantitative number of units in order to fulfill a certain promises that are given at the various stages of this dialogue. And at the end, it leaves us in the position where cultural heritage is considered to be expensive, slow renovation processes, overburdened with the permitting processes, declarations of the authenticity of the materials and so on. So basically, okay, we should do it, but it is really, really expensive, and we should provide some immediate solutions, and immediate solutions are somewhere else. So I really liked that Jutta said that we need a new narrative, and what we were discussing within the Housing Advisory Board was a paradigm shift. And even in this question, we were discussing it extensively, and I will go through the recommendations. I think that we have highlighted where this paradigm shift lies. It is in the fact that now I will start with my presentation. So just to fly through the slides, there are some things that are obvious that you have all discussed, that it is about circular economy and embodied carbon, that it is always environmentally more sustainable to work with the existing buildings, that it is more climate friendly than demolition in any cases, that it is necessary to redevelop traditional cores and to really keep the population in. But what I would like to argue during this presentation is that the cost for the public sector is smaller, because you can't look at the immediate costs and compare it without having in the consideration the long-term costs. And this is something that we were trying to highlight in our recommendations. So as you can see, here we had recommendations that were related to definition of what affordable and social housing is and how we should understand it. But then we had the set of recommendations related to land management, urban planning, and permitting reform. And these are the key recommendations, in fact, for the heritage discussion. And later on, I will explain why. Of course, there were discussions and recommendations about sustainability links that are confirming the points that were just discussed previously, and that we endorse them, of course, and also clear links to financing and investment models. So what we were saying in recommendation 29, it is that we need to promote compact urbanization. Compact urbanization is a topic that I'm doing also through another initiative, European Urban Initiative, where we have issued the call on compact cities, and we had 99 requests for participation all over the Europe. So cities, national ministries, and so on. It means that the topic is understandable and close to heart, although difficult to achieve for many of them. Why compact urbanization? Because if you are looking at the immediate costs of brownfield redevelopment, of the redevelopment of the historic buildings, already existing urban fabric, it is much higher than the greenfield development. But there are researches that have shown that the greenfield development, dispersed urbanization on the outskirts of the cities, is long-term costs for the public sector. You need to provide transport to these areas. You need to provide social infrastructure and elementary infrastructure. There are few quantitative researches. I was delighted to learn that the Ministry of Planning of Ireland commissioned a quantitative research where they have numbers. What is the cost of the immediate renovation of the already existing building, and building also within the brownfield sites, and what is the cost of the greenfield building, but in the long-term perspective. So what if we are taking a time frame of 25 years, of 50 years? What are the long-term costs of the public sector? So this is something that we were trying really to focus on, that seemingly fast and cheap solutions are solutions that are going to be very, very expensive for the public sector in the long run. And this is why this is, in my opinion, one of the key arguments for the cultural heritage, for the renovation of our historic cores. I was working for many years on the management plans of the historic centers. And we know that on the other side, if we are going to lose the inhabitants of these cities, we are going to lose their universal value. We are going to lose the aspects of this heritage. We highlighted this also in the recommendations for the Joint Research Center on New European Bauhaus about the sense of place and sense of belonging that I developed with Jukka later. So it goes in two directions. It is reinforcing the policies. It seems like more expensive solution, and I really want us to speak about this. I want us to speak about financing, because it is a discussion in favor of the cultural heritage. Because once when we shift the perspective from the immediate costs towards the long-term costs that are happening, then we are having a completely different picture. So sorry if I was a little bit too specific. And then you have a set of recommendations that we have drafted that are all going more or less in this direction. So towards the polycentric, towards the transit-oriented development. We had a set of recommendations that are also looking at another aspect. It is about the land management. And now we are thinking it is okay, there is a publicly available land in some municipalities, or the land is going to be bought by a public sector. But this is going to structure the huge amount of the affordable housing costs. So also, when we are focusing on the already built, on the cultural heritage, we are avoiding the costs of the speculative land acquisition that is going to happen in a new development. And for many member states, it is incredibly difficult within their planning systems to really embed land banking and the proactive management of the land for the public sector, meaning that at the end it could happen that the amount of the public money that we are going to invest in the affordable housing could be lost towards the speculative land transactions that are going to happen because of the land scarcity. So this is one topic that is extremely important as well. I have 10 minutes. I don't know, Sneška, how long I've been speaking, so I will try to wrap it up. I've prepared...
wrap it up, because we are a little bit running late, so, but it's fascinating, and I think your slides will be available. I'm looking at my team, so it will, all this presentation will be on our websites, because it's so dense that we, people will want to really read and study, and I know that you will remain available for further conversation. So if you can just your main message for the end.
Exactly. So thank you so much, and I will really just conclude. As Sneška said, you have my slides. Also, you have recommendations that are publicly available, so feel free to go through them. There are other materials that are somehow reinforcing this subject. So the ex-ante assessment on compact cities is important one. The tool developed for JRC on New European Bauhaus that is taking into consideration also these aspects as well. But anyhow, so I think that my main message is clear. We need the change of narrative, and we need really to speak about in the terms of the funding and financing, and we need to look at the long-term costs of the public sector. And I can assure you that the long-term costs of the public sector are not in the renovation of the cultural heritage. In fact, while focusing on cultural heritage, on the revitalization of our historic cores and the good use of already existing buildings, we are going to find more affordable solution and really more balanced urban environment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ivana. We definitely have an ally in the Housing Advisory Board, somebody who is very knowledgeable about the why investing and revitalizing existing building is a better solution for Europe. And thank you also for I hope you will also, from now on, we adopt you as our advisor as well, because we need that bridge. And but also pointing out that financing element, that we should realize that finance also is speaking in our favor, and also that means that again, for our to-do list. And the European Investment Bank is also, which is a partner of Europa Nostra in the program Seven Most Endangered. We know that the president, Nadia Calvino, is very much keen on the role of the bank for the housing issue. So I think we also with them have to open that conversation, and we'll take you along as our advisor in that process. Now, we need experts to be the advisors of the European institutions, but we also need experts who are activists, who are calling the citizens to get engaged in this call to action. And that's why we're delighted to have Olaf Gravert, who is with us. First of all, Olaf, congratulations for the award that you have recently, Obel Award, House Europe. Your initiative and your work has been recognized, and not only you have been recognized, but you are also an activist, because you have filed a European Citizens Initiative. And I think you're going to tell us all about that and tell us how we can support this fantastic mobilization that you are contributing with House Europe. Olaf, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I will share my screen. No, wait a second. Does it function? Can you see the presentation full screen? Yes.
No, yes.
It's good
Here
now.
we go. Okay. What I want to speak about, and it's really great because it has been said before, and I see this as a good sign. If 4 speakers say similar things, it seems to be valuable and factious and true and very evident for today. What I want to speak about in this 10 minutes is 5 minutes about the bigger picture, and then 5 minutes about our initiative and what it is. And the general question, it has been said in different ways, is actually a question of values. How can we actually see the past impact in terms of like the energy that is in there, the investment, but also the memories and the histories, that we have to speak about as a future potential for the big question of ecology and housing. So this is what House Europe is about. We started House Europe as a non-profit organization. We are a European non-profit which now has over 200 partners. And what we do is actually advocate for the social ecological transformation of the built environment. That's like a big term, but it is actually, if we look at these terms that define sustainability, social, ecological, economic, this is what sustainability is about. We say we can no longer only focus on the economic layer of it. We have to also focus on the social and ecological. And in the end, that is a cultural question, because we have to change our system and look at things different. We do this as a non-profit in different ways. We are practicing architects. In our network are many architects and industry partners. So we are part of this value chain. We do this through research by design. I will show what this is. We do this through systemic policy change. So we as a non-profit, we write legal proposals, and I will speak about our legal proposals later. And we also do this through awareness campaigns. We built in the last 8 months a community with over 31,000 people. We are very fast growing, and I think this is due to the fact that we are able to speak about topics that actually everyone can understand, because we all live in buildings logically. And if you speak about what we can lose or might lose, the memories, the history, the heritage, people realize, we cannot lose it, no? So what are, in that sense, the facts that are important? It is these three numbers that many people know, but it's always important to bring them back as an argument. The building sector and construction industry is the biggest CO2 emitter in the world. This is why the Green Deal focused so much on the built environment. It is the biggest waste producer in the world and also in the European Union. 36% of the waste comes from the building sector. If you compare it to private households with 8%, there is a way bigger lever with buildings than with private individuals. And the last point is super important, and I'm very happy that it was mentioned before, because no one seems want to speak about it. We have to speak about the financing and the capital side of it. 68% of global capital is in buildings, no? And we know this in many languages. We speak about concrete gold. So whenever there's a crisis, what shall we do? Invest your money into buildings. And it's exactly this logic that creates this pressure on buildings for profit. And this is really important to understand. Once you understand it, you will look at the world differently, because as a practicing architect, I can tell you how developers think. So developers, they will come and they will tell you, I will buy a building, I will demolish the building, I will build a new building, and I divide it by the square meters to get more profit. This is how real estate development functions. And if you think about it, every building that promises more square meters, every old building with 3.20 meter high ceilings that you can demolish and build a new building with 2.20 meter high ceilings, you get more square meters and you wanna demolish it. And in this logic, every building that is not protected is up for demolition. And if I say this, what do I speak about? I cycled by this building yesterday, which will be demolished in January. This is a building in Berlin, one of thousands of buildings that are demolished. This is not an ugly building. This is a building that is livable, that was inhabited by people, but that now has to go for a new development with lower ceilings promising more square meters. And this is important to understand, the consequences that currently, every minute, a house in Europe is demolished. So at the end of my presentation, it's 10. At the end of this webinar, it's 120 buildings that have been demolished. And this is really something to think about and to tell people and to start acting. The consequence, and we spoke about 2050 as a goal, it was mentioned that we have to renovate our building stock energy efficient until 2050. It was mentioned in the presentation before that we have to think about like timescales. Until 2050, Europe will demolish 2 billion square meters of space, which would be enough to house 50 million people. So if we speak about housing and the need, it is not possible that we longer continue to demolish functioning buildings for profit that could house people. And that ultimately brings us to the bigger question, what is the value of a building? And I gave a TED talk on this topic, actually. I tried to give a TED talk on the idea of the old versus new and redefining value, because the problem is, of course, that if we only look for the price short term, it's very much what was said before. The public sector benefits from keeping existing buildings. We have the numbers, we have the studies. It is not an opinion, it is facts. But of course, if we only look for the price and see the price as the one number that defines the value of a building, we will continue to demolish and build new. So at large, it's a discussion on the new versus the old, no, which is also a question of heritage and preservation. And what we need is a fundamental value shift to look at things differently. And this is why we started as a non-profit, a European Citizens Initiative. This is our first European Citizens Initiative, Power to Renovation. A European Citizens Initiative is a format where you can make legal proposals, you write legal proposals, you collect signatures, and by collecting 1 million signatures in the European Union, you put this legal proposal on the table of the EU and they have to deal with it. So it's very powerful because it allows us to speak about topics beyond party politics, beyond national election campaigns or interests, really focusing on a topic. And our topic is existing buildings, how to preserve, adapt, renovate, and transform them. And it's important to understand that preserving existing buildings has a lot of kind of like consequences. It's about preserving homes, jobs, energy, and memories. And I want to give you, we started an atlas where we collect successful best practice projects from architecture. We've collected over 100 across Europe already. I want to give you 4 examples to show what I speak about. This is the renovation and transformation of social housing. This building should have been demolished. The architects transformed it. It cost 1/3 of the price of a new build. So they added this winter garden layer. In the end, it took 2 weeks per unit to add this winter garden, reduce the energy bill, and all of it for 55,000 compared to 165. So 1/3 of the cost to improve the life and save energy. It is about what we heard before, training local people. These are examples where in neighborhoods or regions in France where no one wants to live and they have structural problems, they convert these empty houses with local people, local craftsmen who get jobs again. It is about transforming also buildings that might be considered ugly. This is an office building in the Netherlands that should have been demolished, but the developer and architect reused the building. They saved all the energy that is embedded in the building. And this is an important topic to speak about. Heritage buildings, it's a bit like speaking about people who are retired. We cannot deny that old buildings, just like retired people, have contributed already to society. We have to account for their contribution in the past. Their past impact must be evaluated. We cannot treat them as if they are new. This is not possible. So keeping this building saved so much CO2, it saved so much energy, but it also was 20% cheaper than a new construction. Because of course, this building was built in a time when things were cheaper. We know that today resources and material are more expensive. And it is also about transforming typologies that fell out of use because we don't need them anymore. Like this storage building in the center of Basel that was transformed into social housing. So that's an example where an industrial building can be transformed by redensifying into social affordable housing because it was cheaper to keep the concrete in the building than building anew. What it means is a complete new value chain, because of course, when we change our operation, we spend the money on work instead of material. If I renovate and transform a building, the money goes into the labor, into the trained labor, into the local labor, and not into the material resources. And as a practicing architect, I can tell you in a new project, the money goes into prefabricated elements. The money flows out of the country and the European Union. And it is also a question, where do we want to root our capital? And this is why, as a European Citizens Initiative, we propose the so-called right to reuse. Our legal proposal has 3 layers. All of these points are best practice from different countries or cities. So everything we propose exists somewhere. So it's not impossible. It's definitely possible because it's best practice. One is the tax reduction for renovation and reuse material, as we have it in Italy, France, Luxembourg, Belgium. The second one is to look fairly on the existing. Currently, we only see risks in the existing buildings and only potentials with new buildings. We have to change this. We should also see the potentials in existing buildings and the risks in new construction. And the third one, the most complex one, is how can we give value and price to the embedded energy, the gray energy as architects call it, and kind of like change the narrative from gray energy to golden energy, and kind of like give it a value. So what we need is 1 million signatures. We're currently collecting the 1 million signatures. It's a great opportunity to speak to you, not only for you to sign, but to ask you to send an email to everyone you want to motivate to sign for this project and petition. Because in the end, it's really important to realize that you are House Europe, we are all House Europe, and that this is not something, democracy is not something that is delivered to us, no, to the sofa. It's something where we need to get active. The European Citizens Initiative is one signature. It takes you like a minute online on the EU website. You can find on our website. So go to House Europe and sign it and motivate others to do so as well. I just want to say that this was our first European Citizens Initiative, and we are currently preparing the next one, which will start in June, which is a right to housing. So it's taking all of the learning from the first one, discussions like we have here, and bring it into the next one. How can we ensure that people have the right to an affordable and adequate housing? Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Olaf. First of all, just how many signatures do you have now? Unmute, unmute.
I'm sorry. We currently have 60,000, so we need a lot more. So everyone needs
a lot more.
A lot more.
Okay.
So the best thing, just to say this last word, the best thing is send it to people who trust you. When I send to my mother a message, Mom, can you sign this? She says, yes, of course. So I just advise you, you all have friends and family who trust you as humans. Those are the ones to sign fast and easily.
So this is for our to-do list. We have been talking about a lot of to-dos, but this is the most urgent one. We have until the end of January.
Yes.
And let's try to demonstrate the power of our network. And I somehow believe that if indeed each of us engage in the way you said, we have our family and friends, all our colleagues, it's so easy.
It's so easy. Yeah.
To show the power of citizenship also, and the responsibility of citizens. And so thank you for starting this initiative. And thank you, Jutta was calling for a new narrative for Europe's building. What you mean, it's exactly what your presentation was showing, that new narrative exists. And so we need to spread it. We need to spread it. And we need indeed, currently it looks like mission impossible. But, let's see, that's why we exist. We exist, our networks, why our the hub exists, our consortium exists. And so we will, the right to reuse. It's this fantastic challenge that you was telling us. And again, the best practices exist. We need to collect as many best practices as possible, and in order to, because we are rowing against the current. Because you said every building is up to demolition, and you said it's up to demolition if it's not protected. I'm afraid, Olaf, that even the protected buildings are increasingly up to demolition, and Europa Nostra is increasingly getting a sort of call for help from people from all over Europe, including the member states of the European Union, because there is an attempt to remove the existing systems of heritage protection. And from Romania just got a letter because they want to remove the Institute for Monuments Protection because it is an obstacle for speedy construction boom and sort of which is needed. So we are rowing against the current, but it's a question of values. So it is all about, our movement is a value-based movement. So I like mission impossibles. So let's make that mission impossible possible. So now over to my dear colleague, Cristina Garzillo-Leemhuis, who is a very important partner in our consortium, the European Heritage Hub Consortium. She's head of socio-cultural transformation. You spoke about socio-ecological transformation. We have socio-cultural transformations within ICLEI, Local Authorities for Sustainability. And Cristina will be animating a great panel of experts, and I'm sure you're all inspired. But what we have heard, and having Cristina and ICLEI here, I want to also greet our colleagues from Eurocities. And I saw in the chat a lot of traffic is going on in the chat. So please go on, post things, do your comments, because the time is limited. But we want your input. But so that the organizations of cities, that is one of the strengths of the European Heritage Hub. It's not only heritage organizations, but we have cities organizations renovations because most of the historical fabric and building is in cities. Of course, not only in cities, but the role of cities is very important. So Christina, over to you for the continuation of this fascinating webinar.
Thanks a lot, Sneška. And talking about practices, we'll come now to this panel, From Policy to Practice, Making Heritage Work for Climate and Housing. So in this panel, we want to explore how climate neutral renovation can drive decarbonization while strengthening this social cohesion and affordability, but without compromising the cultural and historic significance of our built environment. And our discussion is shaped by three key dimensions: this regulatory push for climate neutrality. We understood from the presentation of the EPBD about the national building renovation plans that are due in draft form at the end of the year, and that there is this possibility of an exemption for value or architectural matters or special conditions for the heritage, cultural heritage buildings. Two, the potential of adaptive reuse of historic and heritage buildings. Adaptive reuse enables abandoned, underused, or obsolete buildings that are structures or that are ensembles or there are entire sites to take new functions and technologies without compromising the significance or value. So this is, I think, a very delicate threshold we must be careful not to cross. Number three is the role of underused buildings in addressing the housing crisis. And we've heard about it this morning, and particularly that vulnerable groups are particularly affecting, widening also kind of the social inequalities. And the underused buildings represent a crucial and yet, and we were seeing it just before, underexploited resources for expanding the affordable housing stock. So in the next weeks, the Commission will present the affordable housing plan alongside also the communication on the new European Bauhaus, which positions also the new European Bauhaus as a kind of experimentation hub for innovative, inclusive, sustainable, and quality housing solutions. How can we tackle all these interconnected challenges? Through coherent policies that balance climate goals, but also affordable living and the preservation of our cultural identity. So this is why we have 4 speakers in our panels that will offer insights and possible responses to these interconnected challenges. And I would like to dive then straight in. And I have the pleasure of introducing Piotr Lorenz from the city of Gdańsk, architect and head of the Department of Urban Design and Regional Planning at the Faculty of Architecture at the University of Technology. And Piotr has been involved in the development of urban regeneration plans also for numerous municipalities, right, in Poland. In what ways do you think architecture can contribute to addressing climate change, and how can we ensure this fundamental shift in values in the construction sector by also efficiently using the existing and underused building stock? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for inviting. I hope that the background noise is not disturbing you. I think that architecture can contribute in a number of ways. First of all, we are all dealing with the, so to speak, new approaches to the architectural design in introducing eco-technologies which save energy, water, resources, and so on. But today we are speaking about the heritage. And I think this is super important to understand that using the old buildings, again, it's not only about limiting the question of energy use, which is involved in developing the new stock, I mean, like housing stock, office stock, commercial stock, whatever we are talking about, but also that actually reusing the authentic historic structures contribute extensively to maintaining, upkeeping, and even increasing the identity of the space. But also, what is even more important is that we are not talking about the fake identities, but we are talking about the true identities, which comes from the adoption and reuse of the authentic building stock. So there is a number of the things that the architecture can contribute to the topic we are discussing today. I'd like to highlight this issue of authenticity, because if you lose the authentic building, nothing is going to bring it back. It is super important to understand that. Doesn't matter what is the cost, and doesn't matter what the developers say about the issues and problems associated with that. And of course, in the end, we are talking about the compact cities. We are talking about limiting the urban sprawl and all this kind of the things which are associated with shaping sustainable cities. And a part of that is urban regeneration, which also is associated with revitalization of the distressed housing neighborhoods. And that means that we are talking not only about architecture, but also about people and about their lives, dreams, and expectations. So this would be my answer to your question. I hope I did my best.
Thanks a lot. Thanks. Yeah, indeed. I mean, I think architecture throughout history has been built to last over time. So generally, structures are not built for a limited period of time, but actually they are indeed enriched when they also undergo a kind of renewals, when also new, let's say, lives enter their spaces. There are new inhabitants that interpret it. So I think I'm perfectly in line with your perception and your way of thinking about the urban regeneration. I've also seen that you have done urban regeneration plans also in the city of Gdańsk, particularly, and the former, for example, ship yard in the city. So, and also participated in numerous projects such as the Klimagen for the vulnerability, for the vulnerable neighborhoods. So how to green and renature. So thanks a lot for your contribution. And I would like now to invite Professor Christian Hanus to take the floor. He is the scientific director of the research lab Sustainable Cultural Heritage at the Danube University in Krems. And your research focuses on the historic buildings with particular emphasis on energy efficiency of historic buildings and also on adapting architectural heritage to the consequences of climate change and natural disasters. And you talked about the so-called virtues of old buildings. What can our cultural heritage teach us for the futures, and how to address these kind of conflicts of values between cultural heritage and climate change? Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for the question, Christina, and for the introduction. I want also to thank for the invitation. I'm absolutely enthusiastic about this webinar. It's a big honor for me to participate actively. Thank you for the invitation. Yes, exactly, the virtues of historic buildings. We have worked on a project during 7 years. It's called Monumentum Adusum. And there we have analyzed the long-time behavior, the long-time balances, economical balances, and also ecological balances of historic buildings. It was a project for elaborating a decision basis for investors, how to use historic building in an adequate way. And I have prepared two slides, 2 pictures, 2 graphics to illustrate the results and the characteristics of these historic buildings. I hope you can see it. I hope it will work. Can you see the picture?
Yes, perfect.
Perfect, yes. So we have here a slide, We can see that it's one of the analyzed buildings directly 5 minutes far from our university. We have a medieval building from the year 1600 and a new building from the year 2010. They are in a distance of 20 meters. You can see here the corner of the other building. So they have more or less the same volumetry. They have the same heating system. They have also the same use, 6 apartments. So that is fantastic. Same location, same climate. So it's fantastic to compare it. And how normally these buildings are perceived? Our approach is we are considering the energy certificate and what says the energy certificate, the static calculation, the heat demand of the historic building is 3 times higher than the new building. So that is our actual approach. Old buildings are bad for ecologically bad, and new buildings are environmentally friendly. So that is the energy certificate encapsulated. That is a detail. That is a new calculation. That is the calculation from the time when the building was built. We have also calculated the thermodynamical simulation, so you can consider better the storage of warmth inside the solar gains in the building. That's important for the historic building. The new buildings are based on the physical principle of the building, physical buildings of the minimization of the heating lost through warmth, lost through the building envelope. But we have a similar relation. The difference is smaller. But what has surprised us very much, that the real consumption, not the demand, the calculated demand, the real consumption over 10 years, we get the whole data. That is the average value here. That is less, around 40% less than the calculated values. That has surprised us very much. And here, the real consumption is higher in the new building. So the real values of the two buildings are that the difference is not more so big. Why it is so? We have installed data loggers to find an answer for this phenomenon, for this fact. And we have seen that in the historic building, the indoor temperature was only around 20.5, 21 degree. And in the new building, it was around 23, 23.5, 22.5. It was higher. Why it was so? Here in the historic buildings, that is the heating behavior before the year 2022. So that was the normal way how you heat a building. And we have seen that the user behavior with the historic building was different, and there was no comfort problem with this temperature. For that, the comfort was totally okay. For us, also, explication was the smaller windows, because the radiation, the warmth radiation through the windows is less than when you have big windows. That is also an explication. And why here the value is higher? We have here tilt windows. We have here a typical rebound effect. There is a controlled ventilation, but the user inside, they are using the tilt window they open during the day to have fresh air, so you have to heat more. So that is also a fact. You can have a difference between the calculated demands and the real consumption. And what was also for us very interesting, we have balanced dynamically over a period of 50 years the emission, the global warming potential, so the CO2 equivalent emission over this time, and also the energy, primary energy and the balances, and also the economically. I won't concentrate me here in this case because the relation are totally the same on the CO2 emission, because also the new EPBD is considering the GWP over the life cycle. So you can see here the old buildings. We have analyzed all medieval buildings here in the eastern of Austria and similar new buildings. They were built exactly in the same position location where we found the old building. So what here is blue, that is the same value. That is the economical investigation, that are the CO2 emission to construct a new building. With the emission you produce to construct a building technology, the construction, all that, with this emission you can cover our 50 years the operating emission of a historic building. So the economical investigation are very high. We can also see that the investigation in renovation or in construction of a new building is less than the emission during the operating period. They are very relevant. In this case, you can see that the emission during the CO2 equivalent emission are very high in this special case, because we have here gas heating, and that is the gas heating value before 2022. So you can see it makes sense to change the heating system. In this case, the Sternhof Alt, we had a historical construction. We have to renew the static system, the construction system. We had also to renew the foundation. We had also a renew and underpinning. So there was a lot of works to renovate this building. So you can have certainly cases on historic buildings that the economical investigation is higher. But what is the normal case? You can see that in the normal cases, the historic buildings in the bylands over 50 years, and that is also economically the same case, and also for the primary energy, you can see in this case CO2, they are, we can say, they are paired with the new construction, this factor, or even more advantageous. And the reference is here, the net floor area. The old buildings, they have tighter walls, so we have not considered the great floor area, that the advantages would be better to balance for this. We have taken the net floor area. So you can see that the potential of historic building, if we are calculating the economical investigation, also the ecological investigation, they have a very high potential. And when we take only the energy value, that is a momental value, that is an actual value, you don't see what is before and behind. So I think it is very important to consider that and to see this high potential.
Thank you very much. I think this was very important, this comparison of the heat demand, the energy consumption, and the CO2 emissions for new versus existing buildings. I think also the results that you managed to achieve were really also economically and ecologically, as you were saying, a proper investment. So thanks a lot. Your research laboratory, this Sustainable Building Cultural Heritage and Nachhaltiges Baukulturelles Erbe, has recently also gained international recognition. So thanks again. And I would like now to move to, and I would allow me to introduce you to Fabrizio Seminara, We go to a different topic now. He's Senior Urban Development Specialist at the European Investment Bank within the Housing, Cities and Regions Department. And since 2024, you also work at the EIB Housing Task Force. So to you, which financing mechanisms can be leveraged to support the cultural heritage sector and to promote affordable and sustainable housing via adaptive reuse? And could you also please elaborate a little bit on the recently approved EIB Group Action Plan for Affordable and Sustainable Housing? Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Christina, and thank you for having me. I will just share a very few slides. I guess you can already see it in presentation mode.
Yes, thanks.
Yes, thank you. So first question, I will go very quickly through the slides, don't worry, and they are just three. So the financial instruments that the bank offers, especially for the built environment, are very actually large. It's a large panoply that goes to different levels. So it goes from the EU or national levels with the lending envelopes and program loans, as we have done for the 100 Climate Cities mission support, to the very individual project that can be the refurbishment of an existing asset. But the most adequate ones that often are used for the cultural heritage and public buildings are the framework loans and the multi-beneficiary investment loans that we offer to cities and developers in the built environment. This can be either directly to the developer of the projects or with intermediaries, which are national promotional banks and other financial institutions that we use to work with them to then support the multiple developers. These specific instruments, especially the framework loans, are very flexible instruments that allow the municipalities, the cities, and the operators to combine different smaller scale projects and public buildings refurbishment and renovations and pull them all together in what we call a framework loan. This is a very flexible instrument because the client does not need to have a fully developed project of all the components on all the different projects, but we rather define what would be eligible, and then when the project is mature enough, we can finance them. So this is the most common one used with cities that includes cultural heritage projects. So with regards to the second question, as you mentioned, the EIB has set up a housing task force in 2024. And early this year in March, the EIB approved the so-called Action Plan for Affordable and Sustainable Housing, with the main goal to increase the supply of housing in Europe across the EU. This action plan is based on three main pillars. We definitely believe that renovation and new build are not one against the other, and because the crisis of the housing request action in both fronts in parallel, we must build more and we must renovate more. And innovation is also an enabler to find innovative solutions that will help us to reduce construction cost and accelerate the project delivery. When it comes to the specific pillar of renovation, of course, the main goal is to scale up the energy efficiency renovation of the current housing stock, and with that, reduce the carbon footprint. But one very key element is that this is not only a challenge in terms of environmental issues, but it's also a social challenge, because more than 46 million Europeans are in energy poverty. So we really believe that renovation has also a social purpose by reducing the living cost and reducing, of course, the energy bills. And this is an objective that we should not forget. And third, but last but not least, we are truly convinced that the reuse and the repurpose of existing assets that, of course, will contribute to circular economy is one of the way forwards, especially with, for example, office buildings that are centrally located that are unused, or all industrial fridges that are now located in urban areas that have enough urban infrastructure to be repurposed into housing schemes. We believe is one of the 3 key elements in the renovation. And of course, last, the new build, which is to increase housing supply. I would like to take also the opportunity to share a very powerful tool that we have developed, which is the fully dedicated to housing platform, which is called More Homes, Better Homes. And there, this platform acts as a one-stop shop, a single entry point for all the stakeholders in the housing segment. It has very important features like the quick eligibility checker that allows potential clients to check whether their project is eligible for EIB financing, but also for support in advisory. The EIB provides also advisory to develop new projects and innovative solutions. And you will also find there all the information on our partners and the national intermediaries and national promotional banks are other intermediaries. But it also acts as a knowledge hub because we are feeding this platform with very useful business cases, all the information about our projects and case studies. So I really encourage each of you to go through this web page because you will find very useful information when you are dealing with housing projects. And that's all from my side.
Thank you very much, Fabrizio, and I'm happy to see this focus on the pillar of renovation. And indeed, one of the key messages that we had from the Housing Advisory Board, and Ivana was mentioning it, it was not just to rely on the new buildings for more housing supply, but to focus specifically and first to the efficient use of existing buildings. And we know that the EIB has supported many cultural heritage sites, buildings and monuments, either directly or through urban framework loans. So this was quite clear. So thanks a lot. Thanks again for your contribution, and please feel free also to put your questions in the chat if you have any to the speakers. While I, in the meanwhile, turn to our final speaker of the panel, Nicola Matthews. She is a senior architect in the Department of Housing, Local Governments and Heritage in Ireland. Truly innovating, connecting housing and heritage in one approach. Nicola has been also nominated as the national contact point for the European Bauhaus. And I remember also meeting you for the Thrive and the European Bauhaus, this heritage revival scheme, which places cultural heritage at the heart of urban regeneration. So the question for you is, how can we create affordable, high quality, well located and sustainable housing by prioritizing adaptive reuse over the new construction? And what role do historic and cultural buildings play in this process? Thank you, Nicola.
Christina, thank you for the very warm welcome, and it's nice to see so many people I've met on the way. I've had a bit of a technical happening here at my end, and I'm actually moved to my phone to conduct this meeting. I'm wondering, would you be able to share, would Manon be able to share my few slides? Otherwise, I can just speak to the point that you've just asked me. I don't want to delay you if you're out of time. Well done, Manon. You rescued me. Okay, well, just to say, I just wanted to give a quick overview of how we've been working in Ireland and some insights. And of course, Jutta set out the European policy context and how we've been working with that, how it has informed our thinking in terms of our own national policy on architecture. And the European architecture policy set out, high quality and well-considered interventions can sustain the life and authenticity of cultural assets and avoid adverse loss of their cultural significance, giving beautiful, livable and lovable towns, villages and landscapes with local identity. And this can only be created if quality standards are met throughout the process of planning and building, from ideation to completion and reuse. And that really pretty much frames our thinking on the Thrive funding programme. So without further ado, I suppose some of the things that were very useful coming through the European architectural policy were the likes of the idea of Balcultura quality criteria, and of course this wonderful report from 2023, which really was one of the few documents that sort of prompted my thinking about what the future, what was the role of heritage in the future, what were the challenges for it, and how all these different actions of climate change transition, reuse of vacant and redundant buildings, and working at an area-based level. And I recommend this report to everybody. I've included links and things in my presentation, but really it's prompting the idea of a renovation first principle, which I think speaks to a number of your speakers today, and rewriting the narrative for heritage very much at the centre of things, of the built environment, of the possibility of really making a contribution to climate change action. So here's our policy in architecture, and all the material around that very much spoke about reuse and adaptation. And on the right-hand side was one of our first publications about reuse of existing buildings of different typologies. What were the challenges? What were the learnings? But really trying to produce a document that encouraged people to think about renovation first, about reusing our existing buildings, and about what the potential of them could be for contemporary homes. Under our ongoing work with European architectural policy and the implementation of both it and the new European Bauhaus values and principles, we worked with things like the EU Mies Award that were brought to Dublin Castle, and around the various prizes, projects that were given prizes, we looked for buildings or projects that had adaptation and reuse at their heart. And we had a keynote talk by Lachlan Keeley, Professor Emeritus from UCD, and he talked about inheritance and future making and the challenges of adaptation and reuse. And I just want to say that this paper is available on a newly created information page on the National Built Heritage Services website, which has all the materials about how we've been working to date. And of course, we've not just been working under the architectural policy, but we also have colleagues have done significant work on climate change action and under our climate change sectoral adaptation plan. And these are two documents that speak very much to today's subject about the incremental changes that can be made to traditional buildings to keep them in use as contemporary homes, but also, a roadmap for working with them and making renovations affordable and appropriate to the existing building fabric. Also, I just want to highlight, we also would consider case studies, and of course the wonderful exemplar from 18 Norman Quay. Around that project, we have built a knowledge hub about traditional skills, about working with historic buildings, and they run a very successful educational outreach program. Similarly, on the right-hand side, we look for our own RAI awards, our National Architectural Awards, which look for urban regeneration, traditional skills, circular economy, and good examples of repair and conservation. So it's not only just design, good quality design, but also good quality conservation outcomes. I want to stress the importance of thinking outside the box, and I think that's what the new European Bauhaus has really brought to our thinking about unlocking and communicating a culture of architecture, but also working and practicing in a different way. And this was a wonderful installation by the Irish Architectural Foundation, which brought together architects of different backgrounds, looking at specific problems of vacancy and dereliction and the possibility of unlocking vacant buildings for reuse for housing within our towns. And I think you can sort of see that our thinking, our national policy and our housing policy are all converging towards towns as being the opportunity for really addressing affordability and for building a sustainable future. I speak to Olaf's work, and this is the Islander architects, and the importance that the new European Bauhaus puts on bringing the creative spark into the conversation, unlocking the thinking about heritage and its role in the future, what's to be lost, what is the potential, what is the challenges. So this is the demolition takedown project, and the link to the report is very interesting. I recommend it. And then in terms of affordable housing, I suppose some of the challenges and the opportunities that we see arising in Ireland is that we have considerable vacancy and dereliction, and hence our interest in taking on these buildings and learning from them. Funding has started to encourage local authorities to buy and repurpose buildings. The department has also led in terms of architectural competitions and sort of suggesting how we might infill and work with existing buildings in towns to create distinctive sense of place, diverse housing, transgenerational housing. But there are challenges. On the right-hand side, we have these very large institutional buildings, which would deal with, the larger number of units. They tend to be of such a scale that funding is an issue for actually supporting the heritage piece of these schemes. The new build round and about them is much more easier to accommodate. And one of the things that I would like to mention is that in these large typologies, we sometimes have very important large spaces, and the integration of community uses, cultural uses, social uses as part of affordable housing needs to be considered in the funding models that are being brought forward. And as we know from the new European Bauhaus, that not just building housing, but also building a community is where the real sustainability is for the future. We have some very good case studies already collected. We work with our housing agencies who implement our Housing for All policy and national policy for housing. This is a lovely example of a historic early tenement building, I suppose, or hostel, which has been repurposed into contemporary homes very successfully within Dublin. And I think there was a lot of things learned from that project. It wasn't a straightforward project in terms of application of building regulations, but this was originally a robust building in terms of its materiality and its construction. Where we have more sensitive buildings, the application of building regulations is more demanding and challenging. And then a more recent document from TUA, a housing body, about converting offices to residential conversions. So very much speaking to the Parc Bordeaux project of taking our redundant office buildings and considering them for residential use, which is a very positive step. I also want to recognise the role of our local authorities in leading all of this work. They are taking the funding and they are dealing with the whole setup of multidisciplinary practice and working with different typologies, different scenarios, layered situations, culturally sensitive situations. And this is a lovely project from Waterford, which is taking a terrace or a historic quayside of individual buildings and creating new homes, but also a new context for an early Franciscan friary. This is an ongoing piece of work, and we're very much working with the local authority to learn from this project for wider dissemination of practice. So this brings me very much to the ERDF Thrive funding, and I suppose what is the point of this project. We see that it was very important to try and address vacancy and dereliction, but also to build a culture about adaptation and reuse of heritage buildings, and bringing it very much to local authorities so that they could fund buildings in their respective remit, but also to work very closely with communities and to, I suppose, change the narrative about heritage buildings, about their role as part of climate change, and building things like traditional skills, knowledge, construction knowledge, and really sort of changing the narrative about the role of heritage buildings in Ireland. This is the set of the first 5 buildings. They range from sort of 17th century, 18th century, mid-19th century, 20th century, and end of 20th century, so that you can see a range of very different typologies of scale, of craftsmanship. And at the end of this process, we would hope to have a set of buildings that can speak to what was the original condition and what is now the future and more sustainable condition by working with heritage. The Thrive funding programme was set up in 2 strands, and it very much speaks to Ivana's idea of place making and land use policy. This project funding programme was led by an integrated urban strategy, which was working with the local authority in a participatory way and having the community lead the project in terms of tackling vacancy and dereliction, but also working with the tools of the new European Bauhaus in a collaborative way. And I suppose immediate feedback from local authorities is that this has been a terrific success, with one local authority already saying that, you know, it has helped them unlock a building or a site that has been tormenting them for years, and now working in this way with the local community, they see a way forward. Strand 2 is where we fund projects that have been selected from Strand 1, and they very much are integrating all the research and thinking and knowledge that we have built over climate change action and practice in terms of adaptive reuses that are appropriate to heritage buildings, including the guidance that I noted earlier, how you might appropriately upgrade a public building and communicate that then to a wider community about what is its purpose, but what is appropriate in nature. So we're at the start of that process. A lot of research is already done. With the new European Bauhaus, very much feel that there's huge opportunities to sort of transfer knowledge from Europe, to demonstrate case studies that other people have been working on, to drive research such as it's going on building regulations from UCD, Trina Stack. So this is an opportunity to really, I suppose, scale up our area of work on driving heritage at the heart of all of this. I just conclude with, this is a slide from one of the projects, and it shows the communication strategy, the area-based thinking, and then a project of very much dealing with an older community, dealing with universal access, working with the historical information about the building, and this will be a new social hub in Dunleary in County Dublin. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You really managed with your contribution to incorporate all the topics we discussed about the the energy efficiency in historic buildings, the traditional skills, the European Bauhaus, the housing. And it was quite clear also from your presentation that the house cannot be interpreted as a solely an utilitarian service, but has a kind of vital component in the historical and cultural community of a place. I think we are running a bit late, so I would think that now it's the moment to wrap up this session. I saw anyway that there were various contributions in the chat. And I would like to thank the panelists and everyone, and I hand back the floor to Sneška and Joanna Leisner. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Sneška had to leave the meeting, unfortunately, so I will be taking over the final moderation of the event. As you mentioned, we are running a little bit late, so I'm afraid we will have to cut short. I've seen there were a lot of comments and questions in the chat, so I'm kindly also encouraging the speakers and experts to reply to those questions there in the chat directly. So now it's time to wrap up, to also see what are the key takeaways of this discussion, both for the European Union institutions and for national and local governments. And I would like to introduce Johanna Leisner, who's an advisory council member of the European Heritage Hub, but also an expert and researcher on the topic, to give her conclusions, recommendations, and key takeaways. Johanna, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much, Manon. And also thank you, a very, very big thank you to all the speakers and also to all the participants of this important webinar. I think that the topics have shown and the interest that this is really one of the most pressing topics for the future. Heritage is under pressure. We have heard this by Olaf, that we are, every minute we are demolishing a building. And that is something we have already find out in our OMC report. Renovation must always come first. And we need everyone to help that we are upgrading and renovating our heritage buildings, which is not only the protected buildings, it is the vast majority of our culturally valuable and also valuable to the people buildings, that we are saving them. And I was also especially impressed by the topic of the authenticity. Yes, of course, if the building is so much altered, then it will be not the heritage building any longer, and we cannot draw all the knowledge. But the most important part is really, and takeaway is, we have to continue the advocacy. We have to continue that cultural heritage is placed in the mainstream policies, and we have to continue that we have finance programs, tax incentives. Financing is really key. Financing for public institutions who are running heritage buildings, but also to private owners. That is very, very important. Then secondly, I think we need training and skills, and especially here with the renovation, to bring in innovative methods, how to make our historic buildings more climate friendly. And climate friendly does not only mean CO2 reduction. Climate friendly also means a quality life for the people who are living in these houses. They are protected from the cold, but they are also protected from the increasing heat waves, and also that the indoor air quality is not toxic. that we have not pollutants, which comes often with cheap materials. And that was also addressed, that we are using more and more for the new buildings prefabricated parts which are not coming from Europe. That is also something what we should keep in mind. And I will not develop more. We have seen a lot of very, very good projects that they have shown that we really must look in detail into the buildings and not only trust some models and simulation tools, and that we really have to measure the real consumption of historic buildings. That is also very, very important. And maladaptation, it is another big topic which was already mentioned. And here we really have to take care that the measures we are applying, that they are based on sound scientific evidence. Well, and finally is, please sign all the citizens' initiative. It is necessary that we are trying to avoid the demolition, and that we are trying to save the heritage buildings for the future, and that they are affordable for the people, affordable for us as a society. Europe is under pressure from many, many different things. It's not only the climate crisis, we also have conflicts and war and a completely new geopolitical situation. So this whole picture really needs our initiatives and our engagement. We must fight for cultural heritage, and there are many other areas of this world who are looking to us, and that they are inspired by what we are doing in Europe for cultural heritage. So thank you very much for your participation and for the enthusiastic discussion, and we will be in touch together to fight for the heritage buildings and for affordable heritage buildings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Johanna. I think that was, a great call to action. Let's mobilize for our cultural heritage. It's only the beginning, and of course there will be a follow-up on our side. I will close the meeting very briefly because we're already running quite late. Apologies for this. I would just like to thank all the speakers, the panelists, and the participants for joining the meeting today and for such a rich and inspiring discussion. I think also what was clear from the discussion is that we need cross-sectoral collaboration between the heritage, between the housing, between the climate and the energy sectors. And also heritage is a powerful bridge. It connects social, environmental, cultural, and economic priorities. So as I said, there will be a follow-up in terms of advocacy on our side from Europa Nostra and from the European Heritage Hub. We have tools available, not only the EPBD and the affordable housing strategy, but also the culture compass will be an essential document. It really reminds us that climate policies must be culturally grounded and also align with the energy efficiency and the protection of cultural heritage. Together with our networks, we stand ready, of course, to amplify this message at the EU level. And we are very much looking forward to connecting with the various Directorate-Generals that are responsible for these issues. And you can really count on us to relay your messages. That's why we will collect all the contributions that were made in the chat. And we also encourage you to submit to the hub. You can do that on the website of the hub, any best practices, any resources that you think, or case studies that you think are relevant to the topic and can also help us in our advocacy efforts. So thank you very much. We will also post, of course, a summary on our website and the recording of the webinar. Thank you again for the fruitful discussion, and let's continue our joint efforts. Bye. Have a nice day.